Hi, Immanuel. Welcome back to Third Hour. It's a chance for Dan and I to sit down with the other pastors here at Immanuel Bible Church and ask them questions about practical Christian living, the same questions that you're asking in your own homes. Today, we are joined by Jordan Standridge, our pastor of evangelism here at Immanuel Bible Church. Thanks for coming, Jordan.
Thanks for having me.
Jordan, we've missed you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I missed you guys too. It's been tough.
Yeah, Dan's missed you a lot. I'd love to hear just a little bit how you and your family are holding up with everything that's going on.
Yeah, thanks for asking. It's been a challenging month. On a serious note, as my grandfather, we found out he had the coronavirus, and he was alone in Italy in a retirement home there. That was pretty tough to think through him potentially passing without family members there, and so that was tough. And then when he finally passed, it was a relief in many ways. It was very joyful because he was ready to go to heaven. He had spent 72 years as a missionary, and just had been an incredible example to me. I've learned so much from him, and just to know that he's with the Lord is a huge comfort, which really has made me just think through the situation more from the perspective of somebody who's lost a loved one and whose a loved one has been in difficulty. And it's just made me more sensitive towards those who are experiencing something similar, where they can't be with a loved one or can't experience even just a joyful thing like a graduation or a wedding or things like that. It's made me more sensitive towards them. Family-wise, actually, I even had an emergency where I had a kidney stone just a couple weeks ago. Funny story. I'm on my way to the hospital with my kids at 3 a.m. and my wife, and I'm throwing up out of the window, and my glasses. These are my old glasses. My new glasses just flew out the window with the wind, and so they're somewhere on Braddock. So if you drive on Braddock, if you find some glasses, please, they're probably mine. They may have some throw up on them, so don't touch them. Yeah, so it's things like that. It's just been an incredible time. Just learning with my family, spending more time in the Word together, speaking a lot of Italian as we prepare to go to Italy still as missionaries. It's just been a really incredible, interesting, and really fruitful time for our family. So.
Yeah, how's this season changed your preparation, thinking about moving towards going to Italy? I know that you had planned to go to a lot of different churches and to share there and gain support in that way, and probably not able to do that anymore. How has this kind of changed the way that you're thinking about getting to Italy?
Yeah, stuff like visiting churches is on hold, but there's always opportunity to present my ministry on Zoom and different meetings like that. So we've been trying to take opportunities like that as they come. As far as support raising, there's a limitation on going to visit churches and being able to be exposed to more people and talking to more people about our ministry. But support has stayed at the level where we've crossed 80% now, so we're almost there. So really the two hang-ups, I guess, would be to get to 100% on our monthly, and then for Italy to open up the doors so that they let us go. And they're starting, they kind of came up with a 4-phase kind of plan now, Italy has, because they're starting to go down in the new cases. And so the question is, will they let people move there? And maybe this summer will kind of be an opening. And then they may close again in the fall, so maybe this summer would be the smartest time to go, and it's always been the plan. So we're just listening to counsel, and I'm going to make that decision soon, I guess.
Yeah, you have a lot of friends and family who are in Italy. We obviously hear about it a lot on the news as one of the countries that's been most affected by the coronavirus. But you're talking to folks who are, boots on the ground. They're in it. Yeah. What's life like for them right now, for Christians in Italy?
Yeah, it's pretty tough. The experience that I had with my grandfather, they've been having with people that they know and they love, people in their church. People have died and they can't do the funeral. They can't, go and be with them as they're dying. I know several pastors in Italy have experienced that. They're just trying to make the most of of technology, and so they're doing all their services online like we are. But it's been more strict in Italy. We can't, you can't go out of the house and do something like this. They're not allowed to, and they'll get fined pretty heavily if they do. So it's been tough. They've been at it maybe a month longer than we have. So by now you can tell, you can just imagine how much they're ready to get out. In fact, Jenny's doing some Italian lessons online, and her teacher is in Milan area, and she was talking about the fact that they were allowed to go and walk 100 feet from their house. So everybody, at different times got out and walked for 100 feet and back because they felt like finally they had a little bit of freedom. So that's just the situation, I guess, there. It's a little bit different than here, but along the same lines.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, with coronavirus, so much, it seems, has changed. But there are some things that haven't changed, and some things that'll never change, like the gospel. And so I would love to hear your perspective on what evangelism is like now, and just kind of the immediacy of this, where, our Great Commission hasn't been rescinded, but our ability to see folks face to face has changed so much. So how do you see this as affecting evangelism kind of in the immediacy of it?
Yeah, I think there's two parts to this. I think people are more likely to listen to the gospel these days. But obviously the second part is there's limitations to being able to talk to people. I mean, we talk to, thousands of people as a group over the last few years at George Mason, and the takeaway a lot of the time is these college kids don't care. They just apathetic. It's hard to get them to even care about eternity and their sin and things like that. I think that's going to change a little bit, at least for a little bit at a time. The next time we go out to George Mason, whenever that will be, I think people will be more likely to think about the situation. At the same time, right now, in this moment, we have to be creative as to how we get the gospel out. And I think even people from Immanuel have done a pretty cool job. You guys made a really cool video called Glory, which is on your YouTube page, right. which was just a huge encouragement. To even see Riley on there, and Jesus and Audrey was there. But Riley, especially since he was saved, hearing the gospel at George Mason, and he had prayed just a few minutes earlier that the Lord would open up a door for him to know the Lord. And then here come Ryan and Musket sharing the gospel with them, and the Lord answered that prayer. So that's just an encouragement to hear.
I was even talking last night with the person who shared the gospel with Musket, with Amran.
Yeah.
And
Amran,
then Amran's now wife, Lindsay, reminded us that she was the one who shared the gospel with him.
Yeah.
So just incredible to see the Lord's faithfulness in how he brings people to himself through just regular interpersonal interaction.
Yeah, there's a sense in which, some of our methodology might be a little bit different in evangelism, but the message hasn't changed at all. We're a lot of times, especially inside the Foundry where we're serving so much, we just have this conception sometimes of evangelism as being this thing that we go do at the college campus. Where a group of us just kind of descend on there and gather up a bunch of folks, like pelicans, just swooping up all the fish they can grab and then trying to share the gospel with them. But evangelism doesn't have to look that way.
Right.
And that's one of the things I liked about the video. There was, kind of the chance encounter. Not chance, there's no chance.
Yeah.
God's sovereign. But there's the
random encounter.
Yeah, with Riley and some folks out of George Mason. And then there's Audrey, whose parents have been, faithful for years. With Jesus, the same thing. A friend who he met in college had developed a relationship with and was able to speak the gospel, but the message hasn't changed.
Yeah. I guess one thing I've seen is an urgency to share. Even I can see that people are more likely. And once things open up again, I could see them being more likely to share. One thing I was encouraged by was I put some videos out there, and then I think the Gospel Coalition encouraged people to share as well online. And some people from Immanuel did that. I think Megan Thiel and Wesley Faust and JJ, our junior high guy, pastor here, all shared. And I'm sure others did, but I didn't see it. All shared their testimonies and just talking to their timeline. Whoever happens to run into their timeline on Facebook. Just sharing with them the gospel. I think that's just an encouragement and using the time wisely. We could be posting about Trump, what Trump said now, and what the Democrats said to Trump, and what the reporters said, which I guess there's a place for that, I guess. But to take the opportunity to share the gospel, I just think that that's a better use of our social media platforms.
Yeah,
so,
amen.
Yeah.
Now, a couple months back, you invited Ted Tripp to come and talk about sharing the gospel with kids, with your own kids in particular. How does this situation open up or change maybe even the way that parents think about evangelizing their own homes?
Yeah.
They're bringing the gospel to their kids.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I've never had more opportunities to share the gospel. We've been watching Christian videos. There's the new Pilgrim's Progress movie was out, and so we watched that as a family. We've been being in the Word more, talking about Proverbs, and I've been going through a proverb every day, kind of thing, every morning. With my grandfather passing, there was an opportunity to talk about his life and legacy, and we spent some time as a family all over Italy as well as in America on Zoom together, and my sons were there, and just all these opportunities have opened up conversations with my kids. And the second part is I've realized how probably I've been exposed to my sin more than ever, just being at home, just seeing how impatient I am, how things that I didn't even know. I know that I'm impatient and I can, get frustrated, but this has been exposed to a greater extent. And it's just been fascinating to think through I guess I've applied evangelism verses to the world, but to apply them to my family. I'm thinking 2 Timothy 2:24-26, that the man of God must not be quarrelsome. And then later on it talks about, in verse 26, where everyone is captured by the devil, captured by him to do his will. And you don't think about your kids as being just like the world. They're born sinners. They're born lost. They desperately need the gospel. And if you think about them as, obviously, my kids could be saved. I have older kids, so they might know the Lord. But if you think about it with the perspective of, here's a lost sinner I get constant exposure to, who's captured by the devil to do his will. We don't think about our kids that way, but if they don't know the Lord, then they are just as lost as Riley was before Ryan and Musket showed up, just as lost as anybody else. Then it's going to dictate, how you think about them, and it's going to cause you to be more compassionate, more gentle. Here's a lost person. I desperately need to be patient with them. I can't expect them to live like a godly person if they don't know the Lord. And so I'm going to not be quarrelsome. I'm not going to yell at them. I'm not going to fight with them. I'm going to use opportunities, kind of like Ted Tripp talked about, to point to the Bible, point to Scripture, be patient with them. Hey, do you think, instead of saying, why do you treat your brother like that, which is the temptation, do you think that that's the best way to treat your brother? It's just a difference in attitude towards them, I think, is important. So I don't know. You guys have kids. What have you guys seen over the last?
Yeah, I mean, just even in talking to some of the other pastors, I think that note has rung out over and over again that this is an extraordinary time for families to be talking about spiritual things in a way that they haven't before, because you no longer have the excuse of being too busy. Generally, right? Most folks, their schedules opened up a little bit, and so now it's like, well, we knew we should be doing family devotions, and now we really have no excuse, as if there ever really was an excuse.
Yeah.
I've
just had opportunities to repent and ask forgiveness to my kids, and more than ever, and those are fruitful times too, because sometimes people feel like I never want to do anything wrong, so that there's, obviously it's better not to sin than to sin. But opportunities like these are for me to tell my son, hey, Daddy did this wrong. Please forgive me. It was wrong when I did this. It's just, I feel like that's happened a few more times, sadly, a few more times in the last month. And at the same time, I think they're important for them to see Daddy takes his sin seriously, and he hates it when he sins, and he asks forgiveness to us. And so there's blessing and curses at the same time.
Yeah. So you started to mention just one of the ways that people are using this opportunity to share the gospel with others, not only in their own home, but even outside of their home. You mentioned people sharing their testimonies online, which is obviously an incredible opportunity, and anyone can do that. What are other ways other opportunities that you see for people right now for sharing the gospel when you can't do like what we normally do, where you go to somewhere and we just talk to random people, or they don't see people at their workplace maybe as much, or if they do, it's only in like a conference call kind of setting. What are ways that people can still talk to, interact with their non-believing friends and family or others in such a way that they can bring the gospel to them?
Yeah, there's different ways. I know people are writing letters. I know one member of Immanuel asked me for tracts to send her. So I mailed her some tracts so that she could send them to all the residents of our nursing homes around Immanuel, because she serves there. And so she sent a tract and then a note of encouragement, because a lot of people in nursing homes are not allowed to be visited right now. So they're usually lonely, but right now they're lonely to an extreme level. And so I thought that was a phenomenal idea with the gospel, there. And the Lovegrens, who are part of Teammates, in fact, they're moving to Italy soon, Lord willing, with the military. He wrote me an email saying that he and his family wrote notes on their driveways. Cool. And so neighbors drive by, walk by, see these notes, and it's caused them to get to know their neighbors, and other believers in the neighborhood have added thoughts to it. And I think that's an incredible idea as well. I know somebody else is writing a letter to some friends who who don't know the Lord, and so they're writing them gospel messages. I know a lot of people have gotten chances to talk on Zoom and to talk through this situation with family members. We got to do that as a family, as we reminisced. There's unbelievers in our family who were part of the call, and we got to explain the gospel to them and share about my grandpa's life. And so I feel like in many ways, there's just as good as an opportunity as ever to connect with people, and it's less awkward to be like, hey, let's Zoom together, let's FaceTime, because I think people are getting more used to that idea. And so I think the gospel's spreading as much as it ever has. And again, I think our sermons, if you look at the stats, even Jesse's sermons, I think they're getting more views. I think as you share on your Facebook page, as it's going live, more people are exposed to it. They're going to see it. They may click on it. They may hear the gospel. They may be praying about, just like Riley was praying that night that the Lord would send somebody. Maybe, just pushing share on your Facebook page is what God's going to use. And I think a lot of people will have a testimony, will be baptized in the next few years saying something like, the Lord used the coronavirus to ... Wow. So, I don't know.
I hope so.
I hope so too. Maybe I'm being too hopeful, but I think that's...
I also agree that it seems like neighbors are getting to know each other better, right?
Absolutely.
At least that's the case in our neighborhood. Maybe it's different in others, but I think people are so sick of being cooped up, and kind of like you were saying in Italy, like any little opportunity to get outside, people are like, great. So people are going on walks all over the place. Yeah. We've met tons of our neighbors that we did not know before because they're just outside now. So I love that idea about, doing some sidewalk chalk or something.
People are waving more.
Yeah.
I haven't been out much, but even just driving here to the church today, everybody was waving to me. I was like, that's awesome, because I'm always waving, and they're always like awkward, like halfway.
Are you sure your glasses weren't on top of the car?
No, it was the other car. It was the van. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think My kids, we had some flowers growing, and so my kids brought flowers to the neighbors. They really appreciate it. I think they're just not seeing as many people as usual, so they're all more likely to engage, I think. So
it seems like too, some of the spaces that we normally have that transform into opportunities for sharing the gospel, like social engagements. You watch a movie with friends, you play a game with friends, you go over and you have dinner with friends. Obviously, we can't do all those same things, but it does seem like you can recreate those social environments online in some way. And like you're saying, I think people are getting more comfortable with that. I imagine it would be helpful, even just towards the goal of evangelism, just to spend time with people, right?
Yeah.
Just to call them up and, hey, chat, talk to me, how's it going? You want to watch a movie together online?
Yeah.
There's tons of technology to be able to do that kind of thing. Do you want to play? We were just, this past Monday night, we were playing a board game online, which you can do now. They have technology to be able to do that. And even those kinds of things open up just like the relational opportunities to then, hey, while we're doing this, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Have you been thinking more about your life and about eternity because of these things?
I think that's huge. And you may be even sowing seeds for months down the road. Obviously, I'm all about sharing the gospel as soon as possible.
Yeah.
People could die, right? And so I'm all about the urgency of, behold, now is the acceptable time of salvation. But I think that there's a sense in which going to your neighbor and giving them cookies or offering them a flower like my kids did, that it opens up opportunities months from now when you are able to go out to be able to share the gospel. So.
Yeah, Peter talks in his first letter about how believers are strangers and aliens in this world. And because of that, this world and the people in it are watching us.
Yeah.
We're obviously different.
Yeah.
We should be different.
Yeah.
But what he's kind of tipping his hand to there is just the way we live our everyday life either brings credibility or discredit to the gospel message we share, right? And so the acts of compassion and kindness and mercy that we show our neighbors or our family are not the gospel. That's not evangelism.
Right.
But it is something that God uses to make our evangelism be better received.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Some people won't listen. A lot of people, it takes years for them to even be willing to listen to the gospel. And who knows what the Lord's doing in people's hearts. But sometimes a little kind, even just a hi, will open up a door for years later to share the gospel.
I was just on the phone yesterday with someone talking about our mortgage, because mortgage rates are low, and had an opportunity even through that to just start, like you were saying, people are just way more open now, and so even just a little bit, hey, how are you doing? Open up just a floodgate of, well, let me tell you, because I don't get to tell anyone else these days.
Yeah.
So just to add an amen to what you're saying, even the smallest gestures can really have a huge impact, particularly right now.
I want to hear that conversation with your mortgage guy.
It was recorded.
For training purposes,
For training purposes, so they have it.
I have a limited time offer for you too, my friend. I would. That's funny.
So talk to us, Jordan. I mean, this is a little bit speculative, but you might have an insight into this in a way that I wouldn't or Alex wouldn't. What do you think evangelism is going to look like going forward? I mean, this is the kind of event that doesn't just stop when the government says, okay, cool, quarantine's over. It's going to have echoes and ramifications for probably years to come about how people think about each other and interactions and being around each other. And I'm sure it'll change slowly, gradually over time. But, let's say in Virginia, it's June 10th, right? They open everything back up and we can go back to work and to all the places we used to go. Do you think evangelism will look different?
Yeah, on June 11th, do we greet each other with a holy kiss or no? I need input.
That's a good question. I think some of the stuff we already talked about is people are more likely to want to talk about eternal things. Although at the same time, there was early on when only Italy was affected, there was a young American girl who was a college student in Italy, quarantined. And I think it was a newscaster who asked her and said, "What have you learned about yourself throughout this coronavirus pandemic?" And the young girl said, "I learned how strong I am. I learned how strong I am." Which was fascinating to me, because here's a girl who's stuck at home because of how weak she is and the inability to go out and to control if she infects somebody else or gets infected. She can't control anything in life, not even the government or anything. And here she is thinking about, what have I learned? And her first thought is, I'm so strong. So in some ways, yes, this has exposed people's lack of control. But I think that one of the things that it could do is it could cause people to become prideful and say, we have beaten this hidden enemy, this invisible enemy, as being called. And so I think that there's going to be a little short period of time where people are going to be likely to talk about it that I think we need to take advantage of. I think the videos online and all these conversations as we're having with people, I think that this is the time, and maybe a few months after it kind of opens up, if it doesn't flare up again and then we're all closed down again and God continues to allow this to continue long term, I think that we only have a few months, maybe a year window of time to really share the gospel and for people to be willing to listen. So I don't know, long term, 2-3 years from now, I'm not sure. But in the short term, I think there's a unique opportunity to share the gospel with folks who may not otherwise want to listen. It may move more things online. I think churches are doing more online. They're putting their videos. A lot of churches who had never done a live stream, even smaller churches, Immanuel has always had a live stream for a few years at least, because we're a bigger church. I think a lot of small churches are starting to put their things online, which I think is a blessing. Especially, I think about it in Italy, countries like Italy, where the word is not preached almost anywhere. That all these churches are starting to spread out more and to become more evangelistic, and so in some ways that's changed. And I could see that continuing as time goes on. I don't know. What do you guys?
Yeah, I've been encouraged to see your dad's sermons on Facebook. Yeah. I can't understand a word of them, but I'm encouraged by it.
Yeah, I think it's incredible. Even if it's, if it's double the amount of people who watch it. I mean, even that is just a huge blessing. So, yeah, I think.
I think we'll have to be strategic. I mean, I'm just thinking about like college ministry and the stuff that we do when we evangelize on campus. I don't know that folks are going to take pieces of paper that we hand to them anymore, a tract or an invitation or something like that, at least for a little while. I have to imagine, any kind of thing that involves physical contact, folks would be a little bit
because of fear, you're saying?
Yeah. Or, hey, we're cooking up burgers, come and share with us. Like, where have those burgers been? Maybe there's just more of a leeriness of that going forward. I don't know. This is obviously speculative, but
You underestimate the draw of a burger.
That's true.
I was thinking about that, but I think there's been pandemics in the past where there's been war where people are stuck at home for a long time, months, maybe even years. They go out, even Martin Lloyd-Jones, I was watching his documentary, which is on Prime, by the way, and you should watch it. What's it called again? Logic on Fire. Incredible. When the war happened, he went out to the countryside and lived there for a month, 2 months, maybe even a year. But then, as soon as it's over, people come back because they just want relationship. They want community. So I'm not too worried about people changing the way that they live. I think most people want to be around people. And history has shown that, things get rebuilt and people start congregating more and stadiums are filled again and churches will be filled as well. So.
And it seems like, too, history has proven that consistently over time, whether it's persecution or it's some form of affliction like a plague, God always uses that to strengthen the church, to spread the gospel, to cause more people to come to Christ. usually in unexpected ways. I mean, you look even in Acts chapter 5 with Ananias and Sapphira.
Right.
You would not expect that to be a good church growth strategy, people
Right.
dying when they're giving to the church, right?
Right.
And yet that's exactly what God uses to, start instilling fear in the believers, and then persecution comes and that scatters them, and then they take it to Samaria and eventually
Yeah.
to the ends of the earth.
I mean, Philippians 1, 14 through 16, 12 through 14, I mean, Paul is in prison and the gospel's spreading more with him in prison. Obviously, he's sharing the gospel with the guards and they're going out to tell people what they're hearing from Paul. But the second part, which ties into what you're saying, is the believers who come to the prison and see Paul in prison are walking away more likely to share the gospel themselves.
Right.
You think, you see a guy in prison maybe he's going to get his head cut off next week. Who knows, right? Nero's the emperor. He hates Christians. That they would see a guy like that in prison and say, man, I'm never going to do what he did to get himself in prison.
Mm-hmm.
There's a danger. If I share the gospel, I could get put in prison and get my head cut off. Instead, the way the gospel works is they see that and it becomes contagious. And then they go out and they're more likely to share the gospel. And so it spreads further.
Well, I know, Jordan, that's been the case in my life with respect to you, not that you've been in prison, but that your boldness to share the gospel has had a massive impact on me and my love for Christ and my love for people and desire to share the gospel with them. So thanks for being such a faithful witness to the gospel. And it really is an encouragement. It is contagious. It causes other people to want to serve Christ and be faithful to share him boldly.
That's encouraging. Thank you.
Yep.
Amen. Yeah, thanks so much for joining us this morning. If there was one thing you'd like to say to the Immanuel Bible Church family right now, especially as it relates to evangelism, what's the one thing you'd want to tell them?
Yeah, I think take the opportunities. There's open doors everywhere. Paul prays for open doors, and I think we should be praying for open doors. We should be praying for open hearts. For opportunities to share. I think that there's already a lot of open doors that we don't take advantage of, that they're really just a click away or just a share away or something like that. And I just think if we would all just consider eternity more and realize we can't control, even believers struggle with this. I can't control tomorrow. I know the one who can, and he's put me in this life to share with others. The only thing you can't do in heaven that you can do on earth is share the gospel, is evangelize. Obviously sin too, but evangelize is the one act that we can't do in heaven. And so I just think this, I hope, is a wake-up call to every believer, that they, God has sovereignly placed them in a circle of influence. There are family members you have that I don't have. There are neighbors that you have that I don't have. And, while we may be called to preach to more people and maybe share a video like this with more people, I think everybody's called to share with the people God has entrusted them with. And so I would just encourage you to think through, how can I share my testimony? How can I share a video? How can I reach the people God has entrusted me with?
Amen. Thanks, Jordan. And thanks, Immanuel, for joining us again here at Third Hour. We'll see you again soon.